Attraction isn't magic, it's strategy, and most men get it completely wrong. You don't attract a woman by chasing her. You don't make her stay by constantly proving how much you care. And you definitely don't earn her respect by explaining how nice or different you are from other guys. If you keep finding yourself in the same cycle, texting first, replying fast, trying to be funny, kind, available, present, and still she pulls away, becomes colder, or loses interest, then what I'm about to share will change the way you approach everything. Because I'm not here to talk about pickup lines. I'm not here to teach you how to play tricks or manipulate emotions in childish ways. I'm here to reveal something much deeper, a way of thinking that rewires how attraction works, and why those who understand it never chase, because they become the prize. My name is Melkor Huamán. I've dedicated my life to studying persuasion, manipulation, and the psychology of power, not from fantasy, but from science and history. I've analyzed the writings of Robert B. Cialdini, Dale Carnegie, Edward Bernays, Niccolo Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, and modern thinkers like Robert Greene and Daniel Kahneman. What they all understood is simple. Human attraction, just like war and politics, is a battlefield of perception. The one who controls perception controls desire. Every interaction you have with a woman is a negotiation of value, even when you don't realize it. The mistake most men make is giving away all their value before it's ever been tested. They hand over their attention, their time, their energy, all for the illusion of connection. But in psychology, as Cialdini demonstrated, what's given too easily loses its perceived worth. Scarcity breeds value. And in attraction, scarcity is not about pretending to be unavailable. It's about being occupied with purpose. Machiavelli wrote that men should be either loved or feared, but never ignored. The modern man, however, has been trained to seek love while avoiding any trace of fear. He wants to be approved, validated, accepted. Yet the paradox is that the more you seek validation, the less power you hold. Attraction dies when need appears. Power begins when detachment becomes natural. This is why the so-called nice guy fails repeatedly. His intentions are pure, but his execution is weak. He communicates dependence instead of dominance. He tries to impress instead of express. He gives without being chosen. He becomes predictable, and predictability kills mystery, the oxygen of attraction. Let's be clear, this isn't about turning you into someone cold or manipulative. It's about understanding that women are not attracted to effort. They're attracted to energy. The quiet confidence that says, I could have you, but I don't need to. The calm dominance that makes her question what you're thinking instead of always knowing what you'll do next. Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, understood that people rarely think. They react emotionally and justify intellectually. The same principle applies to attraction. A woman doesn't fall for logic. She falls for the story her emotions tell when she's around you, and that story depends on the way you make her feel about herself in your presence. That is persuasion in its purest form. If you want to shift the balance of attraction, you must stop thinking like the man who wants to be chosen and start thinking like the man who chooses. When you operate from abundance, when your time, your goals, and your presence are selective, you unconsciously communicate that you are valuable. Your silence becomes magnetic, your absence noticeable, your standards intimidating. But here's the truth few are willing to accept. Most men don't lack looks or charm. They lack psychological structure. They enter relationships without strategy, conversations without boundaries, and lives without hierarchy. And in psychology, chaos always submits to order, which means whoever has the stronger frame wins. That's why attraction isn't about saying the right thing. It's about being the right thing. You can't fake congruence. You can't imitate purpose. And you can't simulate control. Either you have inner order or you radiate inner chaos. And women are biologically tuned to sense which one you carry. Sun Tzu said, "The victorious warrior wins first and then goes to war. The defeated one goes to war first and then seeks to win." When it comes to attraction, the battle is won long before the conversation begins. It's won in your self-image, in your emotional discipline, and in your refusal to chase validation. You win when you become the one who doesn't need to impress, because your presence already does. In this series, I'll share the 5 Machiavellian rules that reprogram the way women perceive you, not through manipulation, but through mastery. These principles come from years of studying real human behavior, the psychology of influence, and the subtle mechanisms that trigger desire and respect. This isn't about tricking anyone. It's about seeing the game for what it really is, because once you understand that attraction is strategy, not luck, you'll never chase again. When I realized that love isn't earned but provoked, everything about relationships changed for me. For years I observed patterns in men who were constantly rejected, and in others who seemed to attract effortlessly. What separated them wasn't looks, money, or charm. It was mental structure. Men who attract without chasing understand one principle. Power isn't demonstrated, it's perceived. And perception is molded through subtle behavior, not words. Robert Greene called it the law of mystery. Cialdini would describe it as the principle of scarcity. Both mean the same thing. Desire is born from uncertainty, not abundance. A woman may like a kind man, but she only desires the one she can't completely read. The human brain links the unknown with value. What it doesn't understand, it idealizes. What it doesn't possess, it magnifies. This isn't romanticism. It's neurochemistry, dopamine, cortisol, and anticipation. It's biology, yes, but also psychology, the psychology of power. That's why when a man is too available, his perceived value collapses. Not because women are cruel, but because her brain interprets his overavailability as a sign of low social demand. If no one else is chasing him, then maybe he's not worth chasing. It's brutal logic, but it's real. So here's the first Machiavellian rule. Control the emotional narrative. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see but few can feel." In attraction, perception outweighs truth. If you project calm, direction, and purpose, her subconscious reads it as safety. If you project doubt or need, her subconscious reads it as danger. Emotional control equals emotional dominance. The second rule, never invest more than the other person has invested. Most men destroy attraction by overgiving. Too much attention, too much time, too much validation. That imbalance triggers a psychological law. The mind devalues what is too easy and overvalues what takes effort. Daniel Kahneman proved this bias decades ago. In simple terms, the more you give without being asked, the more you communicate, "I'm trying to buy your approval." But approval can't be bought, it must be provoked. Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, built his empire on this same law. He understood that people don't buy things. They buy states of mind. And women don't choose men based on logic. They choose the emotional state they experience around them. If she feels curiosity, safety, or challenge in your presence, she will subconsciously chase the source of that feeling, you. The third rule, never explain your value. Show it in silence. Toxic and emotionally dominant people share one skill, emotional pacing. They control the tempo of every interaction. Robert D. Hare, who studied functional psychopathy, found that emotionally disciplined individuals often appear hypnotic. Their calmness creates tension. Their lack of reaction breeds curiosity. And in any human exchange, the one who controls the rhythm controls the frame. I call it the dance of silence. Every gesture, every pause, every look must carry purpose. Your silence should not signal confusion, but composure. Your gaze should not beg for attention, but evaluate the world. People fill silence with their own emotions, and that's where your power lies. The fourth rule, know the wound behind the mask. Every person carries a psychological crack, an emotional scar that drives their behavior. Paul Ekman showed that micro-expressions reveal emotions before they're conscious. Watch long enough, and you'll see what most people try to hide: the jaw tension, the blink rate, the breath shift. In less than 30 seconds, you can read more truth from silence than from an hour of conversation. But here's the ethical boundary. This knowledge isn't to manipulate. It's to understand, because manipulation without empathy corrupts the manipulator first. Dark psychology becomes wisdom only when used for protection, not destruction. The fifth rule, emotional investment must be mutual or strategic. Not every woman you like deserves access to your inner world. Value is measured by selection. When you give your energy to anyone, you appear desperate. When you protect your energy and grant it selectively, you project hierarchy, and hierarchy subconsciously creates attraction. Philip Zimbardo demonstrated that power structures trigger instinctive fascination. Not because women crave domination, but because leadership radiates security. I've seen this transformation countless times in my sessions. A man once anxious, clingy, and reactive starts applying these rules. Within weeks, his posture changes. His voice slows down. His text replies become deliberate. His attention turns from her to his mission. And suddenly women start chasing him, not because he plays games, but because he's finally living as the prize. Human brains are wired to seek patterns of power, not pity. When your life reflects direction, even your silence communicates abundance. That's the difference between manipulation and mastery. The manipulator controls others to fill emptiness. The master controls himself to protect his energy. True magnetism isn't in your smile, your eyes, or your words. It's in your consistency. The alignment between what you say, what you do, and what you tolerate. People can fake attraction, but they can't fake respect. And here's a truth most men refuse to hear. Women don't fall for the man who understands them. They fall for the man they can't completely understand. Mystery is the drug. Interpretation is the addiction. When you stop trying to be liked and start being read, her mind begins the chase for meaning. That's when attraction turns into obsession. But reaching that level requires mastery of a lost art, detachment with purpose. It's not indifference. It's emotional discipline. The ability to walk away not because you stopped caring, but because you refuse to lose yourself. Every idea means nothing if it stays only as theory. The real transformation happens when you apply it, when you build new mental habits that make power your natural language. Because attraction, like influence, isn't about performance, it's about presence. Let me make this simple. When you stop reacting and start observing, you've already won half the battle. Most men lose attraction the moment they overreact. To her silence, to her delays, to her tests. They don't realize that women test not to reject, but to measure. They want to feel if you're solid, or if you crumble under emotional pressure. Every sigh, every pause, every "I'm busy" is a subconscious scan for your frame. If you fold, you fail. If you stay calm, you rewire her perception. So the first practice is emotional neutrality. When you receive a text that feels distant, breathe. Don't rush to fill the void. Don't double text. Don't explain. Just hold the silence. This is the art of invisible power. You train her brain to associate your presence with stability. You teach her nervous system that you're not predictable, but constant. Predictable men are boring. Constant men are magnetic. The second practice, the 3-pillar rule. Before giving your attention to any woman, make sure your life stands on 3 solid pillars: purpose, discipline, and direction. Without purpose, you become reactive. Without discipline, you become inconsistent. Without direction, you become forgettable. When a man's life revolves around a woman, he shrinks. But when his life revolves around a mission, he expands. Women don't want to be your oxygen. They want to feel your gravity. Start every morning by reminding yourself of this hierarchy. My purpose comes first. 2. My peace comes second. My relationships come third. When you live by this order, you unconsciously project leadership. People feel drawn to you because you radiate structure. As B.F. Skinner wrote, behavior is shaped more by consequences than by intentions. The consequence of order is respect. The consequence of chaos is rejection. The third practice is controlled vulnerability. This doesn't mean being closed or emotionless. It means knowing when and how to reveal. You must treat your emotions like currency. Valuable, rare, and given only where trust exists. Women respect mystery but crave depth. If you give them both, mystery at first, depth in time, you become unforgettable. Try this. Next time you share something personal, don't rush the details. Speak with pauses. Let silence do the storytelling. In that space, her imagination will work harder than your words ever could. That's where emotional tension lives, in what's unsaid. The fourth habit, micro-withdrawal. Psychologically, absence reinforces importance. When you briefly withdraw, not as punishment but as focus, you reset the emotional balance. Think of it as strategic silence. You create room for her to chase, to wonder, to reinitiate. Kevin Dutton, in his studies on influence, called this controlled asymmetry. Power often hides in the uneven distribution of attention. Don't be constantly accessible. Scarcity of attention makes presence valuable. But remember, this only works when it's authentic. Don't pretend to be busy, be busy. Build a life that justifies your absence. Learn new skills, train your mind, chase mastery. When your energy is directed toward growth, attraction becomes a side effect. Now the fifth practice, mirror calibration. This means reflecting her energy back to her, but filtered through your control. If she becomes distant, mirror her pace without resentment. If she becomes curious, reward with attention. Briefly, then pull back. You become the rhythm she dances to, not by forcing, but by calibrating. In psychology, this is called behavioral pacing and leading. You match the tempo, then guide it. The one who leads the tempo controls the dynamic. Halfway through this journey, I must tell you something important. If you've come this far and you want to learn how to use this knowledge with precision, you need to stay close to this channel. Subscribe to Invisible Power, because what we explore here isn't pickup advice. It's human engineering. It's understanding how people think, react, attach, and desire. And if you can master that, you can master anything in life, and not just attraction, but business, negotiation, and leadership. Now let's continue. The sixth habit, reframing rejection. Most men see rejection as failure. I see it as filtration. When someone rejects you, they're not removing value from you. They're exposing their inability to recognize it. As Daniel Kahneman said, we think fast and slow. Fast thinking seeks comfort. Slow thinking seeks truth. Most people operate on fast thinking. Emotion-driven reactions. Your job is to master slow thinking, observation before emotion, patience before reaction. That's psychological maturity. The seventh practice, inner narrative dominance. Every time you walk into a room, the most powerful person isn't the richest, nor the loudest. It's the one whose inner voice says, I belong here. Your self-talk determines your aura. If your mind repeats weakness, your energy broadcasts it. But when your self-dialogue becomes royal, grounded, and calm, your body language follows. Confidence isn't loud. It's silent conviction. Every night before you sleep, ask yourself, did I act from fear or from frame? That question alone will build self-awareness faster than any book. And finally, the eighth practice, ethical power. You can use everything I teach to manipulate or to master. The difference is intention. Manipulators crave control because they feel empty. Masters hold control because they are full. When your intention is self-mastery, every tactic becomes protection, not deception. Remember this always, power without purpose is poison. In the end, the goal isn't to make women chase you. It's to become the kind of man who doesn't need to chase anyone. The kind of man whose presence demands attention, whose silence commands respect, and whose energy redefines attraction. And when you reach that level, attraction stops being something you pursue. It becomes something you radiate. Attraction, power, and influence, they're not things you find in others. They're forces you awaken within yourself. The moment you stop seeking them outside, everything begins to shift. You see, every man wants to be desired, respected, admired. But few understand that those things don't come from effort. They come from energy. Women don't chase the man who tries to impress them. They chase the man whose presence redefines them. And that presence can't be faked. It's built in solitude, carved by self-discipline, and strengthened by silence. When you spend time alone, learning who you are without applause, you begin to radiate something rare, stability. That's what modern society lacks the most. Everyone is chasing noise, validation, attention. But silence is where identity is born. It's in that quiet space where your mind stops echoing what the world wants you to be and begins whispering who you really are. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote, "The one who can control his own mind controls the minds of others." That's not manipulation. That's mastery. Because the man who governs himself becomes the rarest kind of energy. One that doesn't react, one that chooses. Every woman can feel it. She may not explain it, but she senses it. When you enter a room and your focus isn't scattered, when your voice carries patience instead of pressure, when your gaze is direct yet detached, she feels something primal. It's not intimidation. It's gravity, because masculine power isn't aggression. It's direction. It's not about dominance. It's about composure. True power doesn't chase. True power attracts by existing fully. Now ask yourself, what version of you has the control right now? The one who reacts to her absence, or the one who observes it with calm precision? The one who needs validation, or the one who creates it through progress. The version that wins in attraction is the one that wins in life, the version that moves with purpose. Remember what Robert Greene said, "Mastery is not a function of genius or talent. It is a function of time and intense focus applied to your chosen field." Attraction obeys the same law. The more you master yourself, the more naturally you attract. You don't need to prove your worth when your life proves it for you. And yet this mastery doesn't happen overnight. It requires a subtle rebellion against everything society told you about love and masculinity. You were taught to be nice, to please, to seek approval. But approval is the cage that kills desire. The man who constantly asks, "Am I good enough?" will always remain in emotional debt. You must become something higher, a man who no longer negotiates his value. You give, but you never beg. You listen, but you never plead. You care, but you never chase. Because your worth isn't up for negotiation. Every interaction you have is a mirror. Some mirrors flatter you. Some distort you. Some reflect your wounds. But all of them teach you something about the structure of your own mind. If you find yourself chasing, it's because a part of you still believes you need permission to be enough. But let me tell you, you don't. You only need permission from yourself to rise. That's where dark psychology becomes light. When you stop using it to manipulate and start using it to awaken. When you stop playing the victim of emotion and start becoming the architect of it. The Machiavellian mind doesn't seek control over others. It seeks sovereignty over itself. And once you reach that, you become untouchable. You no longer fall for emotional traps. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. You no longer chase what's fleeting. You attract what's aligned. Because the greatest seducer isn't the one who wins hearts, it's the one who commands his own. Let this be your mental challenge. For the next 7 days, speak less. Observe more. Don't react immediately. Respond with precision. Notice who drains your energy and who sharpens it. And every night before you sleep, ask yourself one question. Did I live today as the man I would admire? If the answer is yes, you're on the path of mastery. If not, adjust. No guilt, no shame. Just refinement. Attraction begins when approval ends. Power begins when noise fades. And love, true love, what begins when you no longer fear losing it. Because the one who fears losing nothing gains everything. This is Invisible Power, and I'm Melkor Huamán. Until next time, think strategically, move silently, and let your energy speak louder than words.